The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. My wife Lila stood in our bedroom doorway, adjusting her black cocktail dress that probably cost more than most people's rent, and delivered the line that would change everything. "I'm going to the nightclub with Marcus tonight, expecting a whole night with him. Privately. If you want, join us and watch. If not, let's just call this marriage quits." I looked up from my laptop where I'd been reviewing invoices for my auto restoration shop. The numbers on the screen suddenly seemed less important than the woman I'd been married to for 6 years, casually announcing she planned to spend the night with her ex-boyfriend like she was ordering takeout. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "No problem," I said, closing the laptop with deliberate calm. Her perfectly made-up face showed genuine surprise. "You're actually okay with this, Greg?" I stood up, walked to the dresser, and grabbed my keys. "Sure thing, sweetheart. I'll just sell tickets to the show." The sarcasm in my voice was thick enough to cut with a knife, but Lila either missed it or chose to ignore it. She was too busy checking herself in the mirror, running her manicured fingers through her blonde hair that she spent $200 every month maintaining. "Good. Marcus will pick me up at 8. We'll be at the Blue Room downtown." Marcus Lane. Her ex from college who'd somehow slithered back into our lives 6 months ago when he moved back to town. Real estate agent, gym rat, and the kind of guy who wore cologne that cost more than my work boots. Everything about him screamed money and arrogance, which apparently was exactly what my wife had been missing. I'd suspected something was going on for weeks. The late nights at work events, the new lingerie that never made an appearance in our bedroom, the way she'd started treating me like an inconvenience rather than a husband. But I'd been hoping I was wrong, that maybe we could work through whatever was happening between us. Apparently, I'd been naive. "Have fun," I said, heading for the door. "I've got some calls to make." The first call was to Emma Rodriguez, Lila's former best friend who distanced herself from my wife over the past few months. Emma worked at the same PR firm as Lila and had front-row seats to all the office drama. "Greg, this is unexpected." "Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Is Lila having an affair with Marcus?" There was a long pause. "Greg, please, I'm not looking to cause drama. I just need to know what I'm dealing with." "Yes," she said quietly. "It's been going on for about 2 months. I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you, but Lila's your friend. I get it." Was my friend. Past tense. Some of the things she's been saying about you at work, the way she talks about Marcus like he's some kind of prize. I can't be around that anymore. That was interesting. "What kind of things?" "That you're holding her back, that you're not ambitious enough, that Marcus makes her feel alive again. Really ugly stuff, Greg. You deserve better." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not heartbreak. I'd moved past that weeks ago when I'd found the hotel receipts in her purse. This was something else. Something sharper. "Emma, want to help me make a point tonight?" "What kind of point?" "The kind that involves showing up at the Blue Room and reminding my wife that two can play her game." Emma was quiet for a moment. "You know what? Yes. I'm tired of watching her treat people like garbage. What did you have in mind?" My second call was to Sophie Martinez, another member of Lila's former inner circle who'd grown disgusted with my wife's behavior. Sophie was a paralegal with a sharp tongue and zero tolerance for cheaters, having been on the receiving end of an unfaithful husband herself. "Sophie, it's Greg Sandler. I need a favor. If it involves putting your wife in her place, count me in." I had to smile at that. "How did you know?" "Because Emma just texted me. We've been waiting for you to wake up and smell the coffee, Greg. Lila's been parading around town with Marcus like she's single, telling anyone who'll listen that you're basically roommates at this point." "Well, Tonight she gets a taste of her own medicine. By 7:30, I'd showered, put on my best jeans and the black button-down shirt that Lila used to say made my eyes look darker, and headed downtown. The Blue Room was the kind of upscale nightclub that attracted young professionals with more money than sense, exactly Lila's scene. I arrived at 8:15, fashionably late, and spotted them immediately. Lila was pressed against Marcus at the bar, his hands on her waist, like he owned her. She was laughing at something he'd said, throwing her head back in that exaggerated way she did when she wanted attention. Marcus looked exactly like I remembered, 6'2", perfectly styled hair, wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a week. The kind of guy who'd never had grease under his fingernails or worked with his hands for anything more challenging than opening a wine bottle. Emma and Sophie were waiting for me near the entrance, both dressed to kill and looking like they were ready for war. "You sure about this?" Emma asked. "Absolutely. Let's give them a show." We walked to the bar like we owned the place. I positioned myself between Emma and Sophie, putting my arms around both of their waists in a gesture that was casual but unmistakably intimate. Emma leaned into me, playing her part perfectly, while Sophie laughed at something I whispered in her ear. It took exactly 30 seconds for Lila to notice us. I watched her face go through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, and then something that might have been panic. She said something to Marcus, who turned to look at us with the kind of territorial aggression that told me everything I needed to know about how he saw the situation. "Greg?" Lila's voice cut through the music as she approached our little group. "What are you doing here?" I turned to her with my most innocent expression. "Same thing you are, apparently. Having a good time with some friends." Her eyes darted between Emma and Sophie, both of whom were looking at her with barely concealed hostility. "Emma? Sophie? I thought you were busy tonight." "Plans changed," Emma said coolly. "Greg invited us out, and we decided it might be fun to see what all the fuss was about." Marcus had followed Lila over, his chest puffed out like a rooster in a henhouse. "Is there a problem here?" I looked him up and down slowly, letting my gaze linger on his perfectly pressed shirt and expensive watch. "No problem at all, Marcus. Just enjoying the nightlife. Didn't realize it was bring your own mistress night, though." The words hit their target. Lila's face flushed red, and Marcus took a step forward. "Watch your mouth, buddy." "Or what?" I kept my voice level, but there was steel underneath. "You'll what exactly? Call your lawyer? File a complaint with the Better Business Bureau?" Sophie snorted with laughter. "Oh, this is good. Marcus, right? I've heard so much about you." "All good things, I hope," Marcus said, trying to regain his composure. "Actually, no. Mostly about how you're the kind of guy who goes after married women because single ones have figured out what you're really about." The conversation was starting to attract attention from other patrons. A few people had their phones out, and I could see the wheels turning in Lila's head as she realized this wasn't going according to her plan. "Greg, can we talk privately?" she said through gritted teeth. "I don't think so. You made this public when you decided to parade around town with your boyfriend. Now we're all just being honest about what's really going on here." "You're embarrassing yourself," she hissed. "Am I? Because from where I'm standing, I'm just a guy having drinks with two beautiful women who actually respect me enough not to cheat on me." That's when Marcus made his mistake. He reached out and grabbed my arm, trying to pull me away from Emma and Sophie. "I think you've said enough." I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. "I think you should let go of me before you do something you'll regret." There was something in my voice that made him release my arm immediately. 6 years of marriage to Lila had taught me patience, but 8 years of running my own auto shop had taught me when to stand my ground. "This is ridiculous," Lila said, but her voice was shaking now. "Marcus, let's go somewhere else." "Good idea," I said. "I hear there's a nice hotel down the street, very discreet, perfect for people who like to sneak around." The crowd around us was growing, and I could hear murmurs of recognition. Lila worked in PR. She knew a lot of people in this city, and they knew her. This was exactly the kind of public humiliation that would follow her for months. "You're going to regret this," she said, but she was already backing away. "Probably," I agreed. "But not as much as you're going to regret thinking I'd just roll over and let you walk all over me." Emma stepped closer to me, her hand on my chest in a gesture that was clearly meant to be seen. "Some women don't know how good they have it," she said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. Lila's face went white. She grabbed Marcus's arm and practically dragged him toward the exit, but not before I delivered my parting shot. "Hey, Marcus," I called out. "She's all yours now, homewrecker. Hope you're ready for the maintenance costs." His bravado cracked completely. Instead of the cocky real estate agent who'd been pawing my wife 5 minutes earlier, he looked like a kid who'd been caught stealing candy. They left without another word, and the crowd slowly dispersed, but not before several people had approached me to express their support. Apparently, Lila and Marcus hadn't been as discreet as they'd thought, and public opinion was not on their side. "That," Sophie said, raising her glass, "was beautiful." "That was just the opening act," I replied. The next morning, I was at my lawyer's office by 8 a.m. Patricia Chen had handled the legal work when I'd bought my auto shop, and she'd been straight with me then about what I could and couldn't expect. I needed that same honesty now. "I want a divorce," I said without preamble, "and I want it to be as public and as damaging to her reputation as legally possible." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "That's not typically how I advise clients to approach divorce proceedings, Greg." "This isn't a typical situation. My wife has been having a very public affair, humiliating me in front of half the city. I want to make sure she understands there are consequences for that kind of behavior." I laid out everything: the affair, the hotel receipts I'd found, the way she'd been talking about me at work, and the ultimatum she'd given me the night before. "I have witnesses," I said. "Emma Rodriguez and Sophie Martinez both work in the same industry as Lila. They've seen and heard everything." Patricia took notes as I talked, her expression growing more serious. "Greg, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Are you looking for revenge, or are you looking for justice?" "What's the difference?" "Justice is about getting a fair settlement and moving on with your life. Revenge is about making the other person pay for what they did to you. The law can help you with justice. Revenge, that's murkier territory." I thought about that for a moment. I want both. I want a fair settlement, and I want her to understand that actions have consequences. She's spent months treating me like I'm invisible, like I don't matter. I want her to remember that I'm not as powerless as she thinks I am. Patricia nodded slowly. "All right, I can work with that. But we do this smart, and we do this legal. No shortcuts, no gray areas. Understood?" "Understood." By 10 a.m., the divorce papers were filed. By noon, Lila had been served at her office in front of her boss and half her co-workers. Emma texted me a photo of Lila's face when the process server handed her the papers. She looked like someone had slapped her. But I wasn't done. Not even close. My next stop was Ray Morrison's house. Ray worked at my shop, ex-military, the kind of guy who could fix anything and wasn't afraid of anything. More importantly, he was the kind of friend who'd help you move a body without asking questions. Not that I needed anything that extreme. "You look like hell," Ray said when he opened the door. "Feel like it too. I need a favor, Ray. Actually, I need several favors." I explained the situation while Ray made coffee that was strong enough to wake the dead. He listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. "So what do you need from me?" "Information. You know people all over this city. Mechanics, contractors, service workers, people who see things, hear things. I want to know everything about Marcus Lane, where he goes, who he talks to, what kind of business he's really running." Ray grinned. You want me to do some reconnaissance. I want you to help me understand what I'm dealing with. Lila thinks she's trading up, going from a blue-collar guy like me to a white-collar guy like Marcus. I want to know if that's really true, or if she's just trading one set of problems for another. Give me 48 hours. While Ray worked his network, I had my own investigation to conduct. Lila had left her iPad at home when she'd stormed out the night before, and she'd never been very good with technology security. It took me about 10 minutes to access her email and text messages. What I found there was worse than I'd expected. She hadn't just been cheating on me, she'd been systematically destroying my reputation behind my back. Emails to her friends calling me dead weight and a mistake she was ready to correct. Text messages to Marcus talking about how she couldn't wait to upgrade her living situation. But the worst part was the messages between her and some of our mutual friends, people I'd considered close friends, where she'd been feeding them lies about our marriage. According to Lila's version of events, I was controlling, jealous, and possibly abusive. She'd been laying the groundwork to make herself look like the victim when she finally left me. That's when I realized this wasn't just about an affair. This was about character assassination. She'd been planning to destroy my reputation along with our marriage, probably to make the divorce proceedings go more smoothly for her. I screenshot everything and sent copies to Patricia. Then I started making phone calls. The first was to Tom Bradley, who owned the garage next to mine and had been a friend for over 10 years. According to Lila's messages, she'd told his wife Sarah that I'd been acting strange lately and that she was worried about what I might do. Tom, it's Greg. I need to ask you something and I need you to be straight with me. Has Sarah said anything to you about me and Lila having problems? There was a pause. Yeah, actually. Sarah mentioned that Lila was concerned about you. Said you'd been drinking more, staying out late, maybe seeing someone else. I felt my jaw clench. Tom, I want you to know that's complete bullshit. Lila's the one having an affair and she's been spreading lies about me to cover her tracks. Jesus, Greg, are you sure? I'm filing for divorce. I've got proof of everything. I just wanted you to hear it from me before the rumors start flying. I made 6 more calls like that, to friends and business associates who might have heard Lila's version of events. By the end of the day, I'd managed to set the record straight with most of them, but the damage was already done. Some people would always wonder if there was truth to what Lila had been saying. That evening, I was closing up the shop when a familiar car pulled into the parking lot. Marcus's silver BMW, gleaming under the fluorescent lights like a shark in shallow water. He got out slowly, trying to project confidence, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. He was nervous, and he should be. We need to talk, he said as he approached. Do we? I thought you said everything you needed to say last night. Look, this doesn't have to get ugly. Lila and we didn't plan for this to happen, but it did, and now we need to figure out how to handle it like adults. I wiped my hands on a shop rag, taking my time. Like adults. That's interesting, because adults don't usually sneak around behind people's backs for months, lying and cheating and spreading rumors. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Marcus took a step closer, trying to use his height to intimidate me. I'm going to suggest that you accept reality and move on. Lila's made her choice. Fighting it is just going to make things harder for everyone. That's when Ray appeared from behind one of the cars we were working on. 6'4", 220 pounds of muscle and scars, wearing coveralls that were stained with motor oil and attitude. Everything okay here, Greg? Marcus's eyes went wide. He hadn't realized we weren't alone. Just fine, Ray. Marcus here was just explaining how adults handle things. Ray looked Marcus up and down like he was evaluating a piece of machinery that might not be worth fixing. That's so. And how's that working out for you, Marcus? The color drained from Marcus's face. I should go. Yeah, I said. You should. But Marcus? Next time you want to have a conversation with me, maybe call first. Showing up at my place of business uninvited isn't very adult-like behavior. He was back in his car and pulling out of the parking lot before I finished talking. Friend of yours? Ray asked. Wife's boyfriend, soon-to-be ex-wife's boyfriend. Ah, want me to have a conversation with him? Not yet, but keep the offer on the table. As I watched Marcus's taillights disappear into traffic, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Power. For the first time since this whole mess started, I wasn't reacting to what other people were doing to me. I was taking control of the situation. And I was just getting started. Ray's intelligence network was better than I'd expected. Within 2 days, he'd compiled a dossier on Marcus Lane that would have impressed a private investigator. Your boy Marcus isn't quite the success story he pretends to be, Ray said, spreading photos and documents across my kitchen table. 3 failed businesses in the past 5 years, 2 bankruptcy filings, and a reputation in the real estate community for cutting corners and screwing over clients. I studied the papers. How is he affording that BMW and those expensive suits? Credit cards and loans. He's leveraged up to his eyeballs. Also turns out he's got a gambling problem. Owes money to some people who don't accept payment plans. That was interesting. Lila thought she was trading up for financial security, but she was actually getting involved with someone whose finances were held together with duct tape and wishful thinking. There's more, Ray continued. Remember that apartment complex he's been bragging about developing? The one he told Lila was going to make him rich? Yeah. It's a scam. The permits were never filed, the investors are fictional, and the land belongs to the city. He's been using fake contracts to impress women and potential business partners. I sat back in my chair. This was better than I'd hoped. Can we prove any of this? Already did. I've got copies of the real property records, the permit applications that were denied, and contact information for 2 of his previous victims, women who thought they were investing in his business and ended up losing their savings. This changed everything. I wasn't just dealing with a garden variety affair anymore. Marcus was a con artist, and my wife was his latest mark. The question was, did I warn her, or did I let her find out the hard way? The answer came to me while I was working on a 1967 Mustang that afternoon. Lila had made her choice. She'd chosen to believe Marcus's lies over 6 years of marriage to me. She'd chosen to humiliate me publicly and spread rumors about my character. She'd chosen to try to destroy my reputation to cover her own tracks. She'd made her bed. Now she could lie in it. But first, I had a few more moves to make. Emma had been feeding me information about the situation at Lila's office. Apparently, word of our nightclub confrontation had spread through the PR firm like wildfire, and Lila was becoming a liability. Her boss, Ms. Brenner, was old-school professional and had no tolerance for employees whose personal drama affected the company's reputation. She's been called into 3 meetings this week, Emma told me over coffee. Brenner's not happy. They've got several high-profile clients who are asking questions about Lila's professionalism. What kind of questions? The kind that come up when your account manager is having a very public affair and getting divorced. These are family-oriented businesses, Greg. They don't want their brand associated with that kind of drama. I filed that information away for later use. My next move was more direct. I'd been tracking Marcus's movements for a week, and he was a creature of habit. Every Thursday night, he took Lila to the same upscale restaurant downtown, Elevation, a rooftop place that catered to people who wanted to see and be seen. This Thursday, I made sure they weren't the only ones doing the seeing. I arrived at Elevation an hour before their usual reservation time and positioned myself at the bar with a clear view of their preferred table. When they arrived, I was ready with my phone's camera. Marcus was in full peacock mode, gesturing expansively as he told Lila some story that was probably complete fiction. She was hanging on every word, laughing at his jokes, touching his arm, playing the part of the adoring girlfriend. I took photos of everything, their intimate conversation, the way he paid for dinner with a credit card that he probably couldn't afford, the kiss they shared over dessert. Then I waited for them to leave before following them to the parking garage. That's where things got interesting. Marcus's BMW wouldn't start. I watched from across the garage as he tried the ignition repeatedly, his face growing red with frustration. Lila stood beside the car in her expensive dress and heels, looking increasingly annoyed as Marcus popped the hood and pretended to know what he was looking at. I could have helped. 6 years of marriage meant I'd jumped Lila's car more times than I could count, and I knew she had jumper cables in her trunk. But I stayed where I was and watched Marcus's facade crumble as he was forced to call for roadside assistance. The tow truck driver who showed up was Danny Kowalski, who'd been bringing cars to my shop for years. I texted him while he was hooking up the BMW. "Danny, it's Greg Sandler. That BMW you're towing, any idea what's wrong with it?" He texted back 5 minutes later. "Dead battery, but that's not the real problem. This thing's been in 3 accidents and poorly repaired. Frame damage, electrical issues, transmission problems. It's a rolling disaster." So Marcus's status symbol was as fake as everything else about him. The man Lila thought was her upgrade couldn't even keep his car running. I sent the photos from dinner to Emma with a simple message. "Thought you might find these interesting." Within an hour, those photos were circulating through Lila's professional network. By the next morning, they'd made their way to Ms. Brenner's desk. Emma called me with the update. Brenner called Lila into her office first thing this morning. Apparently, one of their biggest clients saw the photos and specifically requested that Lila not be involved in their account anymore. What did Lila say? She tried to claim the photos were taken without her consent and that you were stalking her. Brenner told her that her personal life was her business, but when it started affecting client relationships, it became the company's business. Is she in trouble? She's on thin ice. One more incident and she's gone. That afternoon, I got a call from Detective Kelly, a guy who'd been bringing his personal cars to my shop for years. We weren't close friends, but we had the kind of relationship built on mutual respect and good work. "Greg, I need to give you a heads up about something. Your wife came in today trying to file harassment charges against you." My blood ran cold. "Harassment charges?" "She claims you've been following her, taking pictures of her without consent and making threats. I told her that unless she had evidence of actual threats or illegal behavior, there wasn't much we could do. But I thought you should know she's trying to build a case against you." "Kelly, I haven't threatened anyone. I've been documenting her affair for divorce proceedings, but that's legal." "I figured. But be careful, Greg. Divorce makes people do crazy things, and she seems pretty desperate to paint you as the bad guy here." After I hung up, I realized Lila was escalating. She wasn't content to just leave me for Marcus. She wanted to destroy me completely. The harassment charges were probably her way of trying to gain leverage in the divorce proceedings. But two could play that game. I called Patricia and filled her in on everything: Marcus's financial situation, the fake business deals, Lila's attempt to file false charges against me. "This is actually good news for us," Patricia said. "If we can prove that Marcus is a con artist and that Lila knew about his illegal activities, it strengthens our case considerably, and if she's filing false police reports, that's a crime." "What do you need from me?" "Everything Ray found on Marcus, plus any evidence you have of Lila's knowledge of his business dealings. Text messages, emails, anything that shows she was aware of what he was really doing." I spent the evening going through Lila's digital communications again, looking for anything that connected her to Marcus's schemes. What I found was a series of text messages between Lila and Marcus discussing his big real estate deal and how they were going to live like royalty once it went through. She knew. Maybe not all the details, but she knew something wasn't right about Marcus's business, and she'd chosen to ignore it because she wanted the lifestyle he was promising her. The next morning, I made copies of everything and delivered them to Patricia. Then I drove to my shop and tried to focus on work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was all building towards something bigger. That feeling proved correct around 3 p.m. when Marcus's BMW pulled into my parking lot again. But this time, he wasn't alone. Lila was with him, and they both looked angry. I walked out to meet them, wiping my hands on a shop rag. "Twice in 1 week, Marcus. I'm starting to think you like me." "Cut the crap, Greg," Lila snapped. "We know you've been following us, taking pictures, trying to sabotage Marcus's business. This has gone far enough." "Has it? Because from where I'm standing, this is just getting interesting." Marcus stepped forward, trying to look threatening. "You need to back off. Leave us alone, stop spreading lies about me, and maybe we can all move on with our lives." "Lies?" I laughed. "Marcus, the only lies here are the ones you've been telling my wife about your fake real estate empire and your non-existent success." Lila's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "Ask him about the apartment complex that doesn't exist. Ask him about the investors who aren't real. Ask him about the 3 bankruptcies and the gambling debts." "That's bullshit," Marcus said, but his voice was shaking. "Is it? Lila, ask him why his BMW needed a tow truck last night. Ask him why he's been using credit cards to pay for all those expensive dinners." I could see the doubt creeping into Lila's eyes. She looked at Marcus, waiting for him to deny it, to explain, to make it make sense. He couldn't. "Lila," he said, "let me explain." "Oh, this should be good," I said. "Please, Marcus, explain to my wife how you've been conning her for months." That's when Marcus snapped. He lunged at me, swinging wildly, but I'd been expecting it. I sidestepped his clumsy attack and grabbed him by his expensive shirt, using his own momentum to slam him against the side of his car. "Here's the thing, Marcus," I said quietly, my face inches from his. "I know who you really are now. I know about the debts, the failed businesses, the people you've screwed over. And if you ever come to my place of business again, if you ever threaten me again, I'm going to make sure everyone in this city knows exactly what kind of man you really are." I released him and stepped back. He straightened his shirt, trying to regain his composure, but the damage was done. Lila had seen him lose control, seen him back down, seen the fear in his eyes. "Lila," I said, turning to my wife, "you made your choice. You chose him over me, chose his lies over 6 years of marriage. That's your right. But don't expect me to make it easy for you, and don't expect me to let you destroy my reputation to cover your tracks." They left without another word, but I could see Lila asking Marcus questions as they drove away, questions he probably couldn't answer honestly. That evening, Emma texted me. "Lila's been calling everyone, trying to verify what you told her about Marcus. Nobody's taking her calls." The next morning, Sophie sent me a photo of a "for sale" sign in front of Marcus's apartment building. The sign had been vandalized with the word "fraud" spray-painted across it in red letters. I hadn't done that, but I had a pretty good idea who had. Marcus had made enemies all over the city, and word was spreading about his schemes. By Friday afternoon, Lila's world was crumbling. Her boss had given her an ultimatum: clean up her personal drama or find another job. Her friends had abandoned her, and the man she'd thrown away her marriage for was turning out to be everything I'd warned her he was. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Monday morning brought a surprise I should have seen coming. Detective Kelly called me at 7 a.m. with a tone that was all business. "Greg, I need you to come down to the station. Lila's filed formal charges against you for stalking and harassment. She's got photos of you at the restaurant, witnesses who saw you following them, and she's claiming you threatened Marcus." My stomach dropped. "Kelly, you know that's not what happened." "I know what you told me happened, but she's got evidence, and she's got a lawyer now. You need to take this seriously." I called Patricia on the way to the police station. She met me there, looking grim. "This is bad, Greg. If they can make stalking charges stick, it could affect the divorce settlement and potentially result in criminal charges." "But I wasn't stalking them. I was documenting her affair for divorce proceedings." The line between those two things can be very thin, legally speaking. We need to be prepared for this to get ugly. The interview at the police station was surreal. Lila sat across from me in the small conference room, flanked by a lawyer I didn't recognize, spinning a story that bore only a passing resemblance to reality. According to her version of events, I'd been controlling and possessive throughout our marriage. When she'd finally worked up the courage to ask for a divorce, I'd become obsessed with destroying her new relationship. I'd been following her and Marcus, taking pictures, making threats, and trying to sabotage Marcus's business with lies and rumors. She had photos of me at the restaurant, testimony from Marcus about our confrontations, and a detailed timeline of what she claimed was months of harassment. It was a masterful performance, and if I hadn't lived through the real version of events, I might have believed it myself. When it was my turn to speak, I laid out the truth. The affair, the ultimatum, the lies she'd been spreading about me, the evidence of Marcus's criminal activity. Patricia had prepared a counter-narrative that painted me as the victim of a calculated campaign to destroy my reputation and steal my assets. Detective Kelly listened to both sides without comment, taking notes and asking clarifying questions. When we were done, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "This is a mess," he said finally. "Mrs. Sandler, your husband's behavior may have been inappropriate, but I don't see evidence of criminal stalking. Mr. Sandler, your wife has the right to end your marriage and pursue other relationships, even if you don't like how she's going about it." He looked at both of us. "My advice is to let the lawyers handle the divorce and stay away from each other until it's final. And both of you need to understand that if this escalates any further, someone's going to end up in jail." We left the police station without resolution, but I could see the doubt in Lila's eyes. Her lawyer had probably told her the stalking charges were weak, and she was realizing that her attempt to paint me as the villain wasn't working as well as she'd hoped. That afternoon, Ray called with an update that changed everything. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "Marcus just got arrested." "Arrested? For what?" "Fraud. Turns out those fake real estate deals weren't his first rodeo. The FBI's been investigating him for months, and they finally had enough evidence to move. He's looking at federal charges for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy." I sat down heavily in my office chair. Jesus, does Lila know? She does now. Word is she was with him when they arrested him. Handcuffs, FBI badges, the whole 9 yards. I should have felt vindicated, but mostly I felt tired. This whole situation had spiraled so far beyond a simple affair that I wasn't sure anyone was going to come out of it unscathed. Emma called an hour later. "Greg, I thought you should know. Lila's been fired." "Fired?" Brenner called her into the office this afternoon and told her that the company couldn't afford to have an employee whose personal life was making headlines. The Marcus arrest was the final straw. So in the span of one day, Lila had lost her boyfriend and her job. The life she'd thought she was building with Marcus had collapsed completely, and she was left with nothing but the wreckage of our marriage and a reputation that would follow her for years. I should have felt sorry for her, but I couldn't quite get there. She'd made her choices, and this was where those choices had led her. That evening, I was closing up the shop when I heard a car pull into the parking lot. I looked up expecting to see Ray or one of my regular customers, but instead I saw Lila's silver Honda. She got out slowly, like she was carrying a great weight. She looked older than she had just a week ago, and there was something broken in her posture that I'd never seen before. "Greg," she said as she approached, "we need to talk." "I don't think that's a good idea. Your lawyer made it pretty clear this morning that I'm supposed to stay away from you." "Please, just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I nodded. 5 minutes. She looked around the shop, taking in the cars I was working on, the tools hung neatly on the walls, the life I'd built that she'd been so eager to leave behind. "I made a mistake," she said finally. "Which mistake? There have been so many." "All of it. Marcus, the affair, the lies I told about you, all of it." I leaned against my workbench, studying her face. What do you want from me, Lila? I want to fix this. I want to make it right. How? Marcus is under federal investigation. Your reputation is destroyed. You've lost your job. Our marriage is over. What exactly do you think can be fixed here? We could start over. No. The word came out harder than I'd intended. We can't start over. You can't uncheat on me, unlie about me, or untry to destroy my reputation. You made your choice, and now you have to live with the consequences. Tears started running down her face. Greg, I was stupid. I was selfish and stupid, and I threw away the best thing in my life for a man who turned out to be a criminal. Yes, you did. And I'm sorry you're hurting, but that doesn't change anything. Doesn't it? Don't 6 years of marriage count for something? I thought about that question. 6 years of marriage, of building a life together, of thinking I knew the woman I'd fallen in love with. It should count for something, but it didn't count for more than what she'd done to destroy it. 6 years should have been enough to keep you from cheating on me, I said. 6 years should have been enough to keep you from trying to destroy my reputation. 6 years should have been enough to make you think twice before giving me an ultimatum about watching you with another man. She flinched like I'd hit her. I know I hurt you, and I know I can't take it back. But we could try. No, Lila. We're done. The divorce papers have been filed, the assets will be divided, and we'll both move on with our lives. But we're not trying anything together ever again. She stood there for a moment, looking like she wanted to say something else. But there was nothing left to say. She'd burned everything down, and now she was standing in the ashes, asking me to help her rebuild. I wasn't going to do it. After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about the conversation. Part of me felt bad for her. She'd lost everything, and some of it was her own fault. But some of it was just bad luck in choosing the wrong person to have an affair with. But a larger part of me felt like justice had been served. She'd tried to destroy me to cover her own tracks, and instead, she'd destroyed herself. The next few days passed quietly. The divorce proceedings moved forward, Marcus's arrest made the local news, and Lila apparently moved back in with her parents while she figured out what to do with her life. I thought it was over. I thought we'd reached the end of the story, and all that was left was the paperwork and the moving on. I was wrong. Friday night, I was having a beer at Murphy's, a blue-collar bar near my shop, when Sophie showed up looking agitated. Greg, we need to talk. Lila's planning something. What kind of something? Revenge. She blames you for everything that happened with Marcus, for losing her job, for her reputation being destroyed. She's been calling people, trying to get them to back up her story about you being abusive and controlling. My blood ran cold. Is anyone listening to her? Some people are. She's desperate, and desperate people can be convincing. She's telling anyone who will listen that you orchestrated Marcus's arrest, that you've been stalking her for months, that you're dangerous. That's insane. I had nothing to do with Marcus getting arrested. The FBI was already investigating him. I know that, and you know that, but Lila's spinning it like you fed them information to get revenge on her. She's trying to turn this whole thing around and make you the villain. I finished my beer and thought about what Sophie had told me. Lila was trying one last desperate play to salvage something from the wreckage of her life. She couldn't get Marcus back. He was probably going to prison. She couldn't get her job back. Her reputation was shot. But maybe she could destroy me in the process of going down. Sophie, what exactly is she planning? I don't know for sure, but Emma heard her talking about making a public statement. Something about domestic abuse and how the system failed to protect her from her dangerous ex-husband. That's when I realized this wasn't over, not even close. Lila was planning to go nuclear, to destroy my reputation and possibly my business in one final act of revenge. But I'd learned a few things about revenge over the past few weeks. And if Lila wanted to play that game, I was ready to show her how it was really done. The charity event was perfect. The annual Community Heroes Dinner, held every year in Riverside Park's pavilion, brought together every important person in the city: business leaders, politicians, community organizers, and media. Lila had bought a ticket weeks ago, back when she thought she'd be attending as Marcus's successful girlfriend. Now she was planning to use it as a platform for her final revenge against me. I knew because Emma had managed to get a copy of the speech Lila had been working on. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. A carefully crafted story about an abusive husband who'd used his connections to destroy her career and her relationship, who'd stalked and harassed her, who represented everything wrong with how society treated women who tried to leave dangerous men. It was complete fiction, but it was compelling fiction. And in the current climate, it was the kind of story that could destroy a man's reputation permanently, regardless of whether it was true. But Lila had made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed I would just sit back and let her destroy me. Saturday evening, I arrived at the charity dinner in my best suit, the one I'd worn to our wedding 6 years ago. Ray was with me, along with Emma and Sophie, all of us dressed like we belonged at a high society event. The pavilion was decorated with white lights and flowers, filled with round tables where the city's elite were enjoying their salmon and making small talk about their charitable endeavors. I spotted Lila immediately. She was sitting alone at a table near the front, looking nervous but determined. The evening's program included several speakers talking about community service and local heroes. Lila wasn't on the official schedule, but I knew she was planning to request time for an impromptu statement during the open microphone portion of the evening. I was planning to beat her to it. When the master of ceremonies asked if anyone had anything they'd like to share with the community, I stood up and walked to the front of the pavilion. Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Sandler, and I own Sandler Auto Restoration here in town. I have something I'd like to share with you all tonight. I could see Lila's face go white from across the room. She hadn't expected me to be here, let alone to speak first. 2 weeks ago, my wife informed me that she was leaving me for another man. She gave me an ultimatum. I could either watch her with her new boyfriend or we could get divorced. I chose divorce. A murmur went through the crowd. This wasn't the usual charity dinner conversation. Now, I'm not here to air my dirty laundry or to ask for sympathy. Marriages end, people cheat, life goes on. But I am here to talk about what happened next, because I think it says something important about our community and about the consequences of our choices. I had their attention now. Every eye in the pavilion was focused on me. The man my wife chose to leave me for was Marcus Lane, a real estate agent who many of you probably know. Marcus presented himself as a successful businessman, someone who was developing major projects around the city. He drove an expensive car, wore expensive clothes, and made expensive promises. I paused, letting that sink in. As it turns out, Marcus Lane was arrested by the FBI last Monday on federal fraud charges. The real estate projects were fake. The investors were fictional. The success was an illusion built on lies and other people's money. The murmur grew louder. Several people were taking out their phones, probably looking up news stories about Marcus's arrest. But here's the thing that really bothers me. When my wife's new relationship fell apart, when her boyfriend turned out to be a criminal, when her choices started having consequences, she decided that it must be my fault. She decided that I was the villain in her story. I looked directly at Lila, who was sitting frozen in her chair. Tonight, she was planning to stand up here and tell you all that I'm an abusive husband who stalked and harassed her. She was going to ask for your sympathy and your support in painting me as a dangerous man who destroyed her life out of jealousy and spite. The crowd was completely silent now. You could have heard a pin drop. The truth is simpler and sadder than that. My wife made a series of bad choices. She chose to have an affair. She chose to believe a con man's lies. She chose to try to destroy my reputation to cover her own tracks. And now she's choosing to play the victim rather than take responsibility for the consequences of her actions. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folder. I have with me tonight copies of text messages between my wife and Marcus Lane, discussing their affair and their plans to humiliate me. I have emails where my wife called me dead weight and talked about how she couldn't wait to upgrade her living situation. I have documentation of her attempts to spread lies about me to our mutual friends and colleagues. I held up the folder for everyone to see. I also have documentation of Marcus Lane's criminal activities, his fake business deals, and his history of defrauding women who thought they were investing in his success. All of this information is available to anyone who wants to verify what I'm telling you tonight. The crowd was starting to get restless. Some people looked uncomfortable, others looked fascinated by the drama unfolding in front of them. Now my wife might stand up after I'm done and tell you that I'm lying, that I'm the real villain here, that she's the victim of an abusive marriage, and you'll have to decide who you believe. I walked over to the table where the audio-visual equipment was set up and plugged in my phone. But before you make that decision, I'd like you to hear something. The speakers crackled to life, and suddenly, Lila's voice filled the pavilion. It was a recording of a phone conversation between her and Marcus from 2 weeks ago, where she talked about her plans to destroy Greg's reputation and make him pay for humiliating her at the nightclub. The recording played for about 2 minutes, with Lila's voice clearly audible as she discussed spreading lies about me, filing false police reports, and using the charity dinner as a platform to publicly destroy my character. When it ended, the pavilion was dead silent. I unplugged my phone and returned to the microphone. That recording was made 2 weeks ago. My wife has been planning this character assassination for weeks, carefully crafting a story designed to destroy my reputation and my business. I looked out at the crowd, then back at Lila, who looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. I'm not here tonight to destroy my wife's reputation. She's done that herself through her choices and her actions. I'm here to defend my own reputation and to make sure that the truth is heard before the lies have a chance to take root. I started to walk back to my table, then stopped and returned to the microphone. Oh, and one more thing. Emma Rodriguez and Sophie Martinez, who many of you know from the PR and legal communities, are here tonight. They've been friends with my wife for years, and they've witnessed everything I've described. If anyone has questions about the truth of what I've said, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer them. Emma and Sophie stood up and waved to the crowd. Both of them looked serious and professional, lending credibility to everything I'd said. As I walked back to my table, the pavilion erupted in conversation. People were turning to look at Lila, who was sitting alone at her table with tears streaming down her face. Some people looked sympathetic, but most looked disgusted. The master of ceremonies tried to regain control of the evening, but the damage was done. The charity dinner had turned into a public trial, and the verdict was clear. Lila stood up abruptly and tried to leave, but she had to walk past my table to reach the exit. As she passed, she stopped and looked at me with pure hatred in her eyes. "You've destroyed everything," she whispered. "No," I said quietly. "You destroyed everything. I just made sure everyone knew who was really responsible." She left without another word, and I never saw her again. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. Lila didn't contest any of the terms. She couldn't, given the evidence of her affair and her attempts to destroy my reputation. She moved to another state, apparently to stay with relatives while she figured out how to rebuild her life. Marcus Lane was convicted on federal fraud charges and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Several of his victims, including 2 women he'd conned with fake investment opportunities, testified at his trial about how he'd used fake business success to manipulate them. Emma got promoted at the PR firm after Lila left. Sophie started her own legal practice and asked me to be one of her first clients. Ray and I expanded the auto shop and hired 2 more mechanics. As for me, I learned something important about revenge. It's not about destroying the other person. It's about making sure the truth is heard and the consequences are appropriate. Lila and Marcus destroyed themselves through their choices and their actions. All I did was make sure everyone could see clearly what had really happened. 6 months after the charity dinner, I was working late at the shop when Detective Kelly stopped by. "How are you doing, Greg?" "Better than I expected. The business is good. I've got a new apartment downtown and I'm sleeping better than I have in years." "Any regrets about how things went down?" I thought about that question. Did I regret the public humiliation at the charity dinner? Did I regret exposing Lila's lies so thoroughly? Did I regret making sure that everyone in town knew exactly what kind of person she really was? "No," I said finally. "No regrets. She made her choices, and I made mine. The difference is, my choices were about telling the truth and defending myself. Hers were about lying and trying to destroy an innocent person." Kelly nodded. "Sometimes that's all you can do. Make sure the truth gets heard." After he left, I finished working on the 1967 Mustang I'd been restoring. It was a beautiful car that had been badly damaged and poorly repaired by previous owners. But with patience, skill, and attention to detail, it was becoming something magnificent again. Kind of like my life. I locked up the shop and headed home to my new apartment, where I planned to have a beer, watch some TV, and enjoy the peace that comes from knowing that justice has been served and the truth has prevailed. Lila had tried to destroy me, but instead she'd destroyed herself. Marcus had tried to con his way to success, but instead he'd conned his way to prison. And I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply making sure that people face the real consequences of their real choices. The truth had set me free, and it had sent my enemies exactly where they belonged.